In the previous episode, Lin found himself up against the toughest world boss he'd faced yet. After a few close calls, he finally got the chance to summon his newly acquired Insect King for some much-needed backup. As the Insect King unleashed its soul-devouring skill, Lin saw the perfect opening. As the story continues, the monster's soul hovered in the air, leaving the boss itself frozen in place. A perfect chance for some free hits. Lin wasn't about to waste this golden opportunity. He unleashed a barrage of massive and deadly bone spikes, aiming straight for the monster's weak spots. The spikes pierced right through, leaving the creature reeling. Not to be outdone, Lin's army of skeletons jumped into action. The skeletal warriors leapt high, their giant swords slashing at the monster, while the skeletal mages in the back weren't slacking off either, raining down a volley of elemental attacks. Soon, the monster was covered in wounds, but with its massive health pool, it still refused to go down. But then, the skill timer ran out, and the monster's soul snapped back into its body. The creature shook off its daze, suddenly overwhelmed by pain. It let out a furious roar, but it was clear that it was on its last legs. Knowing it couldn't defeat this relentless human, the monster shook off the bone spikes and started thrashing at the ground with its razor-sharp limbs like it was trying to dig its way to safety. Lin wasn't having any of that. He fired another round of bone spikes, but the monster kept burrowing. Before he knew it, half of its body had already disappeared underground. No way was Lin letting it escape. He commanded his skeletons to grab hold of the monster's legs, and they all pulled with everything they had to drag it back to the surface. This time, Lin unleashed an even more ferocious wave of attacks. The monster went into a frenzy, spewing out more toxic mist, but it was clearly just a desperate move. Weakened and exhausted, its swipe attacks couldn't even take down a single skeleton. The Insect King crawled onto the monster's back, gnawing at it from all angles. After a few relentless minutes, the beast finally collapsed. A system notification popped up, informing Lin that he had defeated the Earth Dragon God. He gained 5.5 million experience points and received some impressive loot: the Earth Dragon Sword, Earth Dragon Shield, Venom Gem, and Venom Crystal. Lin grinned as he checked out the loot. The two platinum-grade weapons were seriously powerful, boosting all attributes by 3,000 when equipped. The sword increased sword skills by 90% and even came with an extra dot ability. The shield had a similar 90% boost to defensive skills, along with an additional special ability. But as impressive as they were, neither weapon was much use to Lin. He gave them a quick glance before stashing them away in his storage space. The other two items, however, were a pleasant surprise. The Venom Gem could permanently reduce poison damage by 50%, with a small chance of unlocking a poison-based skill. The Venom Crystal, on the other hand, could be combined with other single-element crystals to form an elemental godstone, which would enhance the odds of a profession evolution during the third-class transfer. The more elements fused, the stronger the godstone's effect. It could also be used on its own to permanently boost poison resistance, though that would mean giving up the chance to craft the godstone. As Lin examined the crystal in his hand, he realized it was similar to the fire-type crystal he had obtained in the dungeon hall. This got him thinking. There might be even more elements out there waiting to be discovered. The Eternal Trials ground was proving to be far more mysterious than he had ever imagined. His teacher had never mentioned anything about a venom crystal. Maybe because no one, not even White Divine, had ever managed to kill the Earth Dragon God. Now Lin was eager to see how it worked. He pulled out another crystal from his inventory, and soon enough the two merged into one shimmering godstone. But right now, the godstone only offers an extra 5% chance boost on his success rate. Clearly, he needed more elemental crystals to power it up. After storing everything back in his storage space, Lin gripped his scythe and looked at the monster's corpse. With the boss dead, the toxic mist began to fade, but Lin had one last task in mind. He wanted to absorb the boss's soul into his scythe before it completely dissipated. Raising his scythe, he activated his soul-summoning skill, but to his disappointment, the soul flickered briefly before vanishing. The level gap was just too much. Determined, Lin tried again, but once more the monster's soul slipped away. The poison mist was thinning out rapidly, and he knew he had only one last chance. Gritting his teeth, he made a final attempt. This time, fortune smiled on him. A massive Earth Dragon God soul floated before Lin, every bit as powerful as it had been in life. Lin couldn't help but smile. He had succeeded, and now had one more powerful summon in his arsenal. As the toxic mist cleared rapidly, the team that had been watching from a distance anxiously kept their eyes on Lin's direction, unsure if he was still alive. When they spotted the monster's massive body, their hearts nearly leaped out of their chests, but then they realized the beast wasn't moving. A moment later, they took in the brutal scene before them. The monster's body, riddled with gaping holes, lying motionless. They could hardly believe that Lin had managed to solo such a powerful world boss. As they watched him walk toward them, every one of them gulped hard. Suddenly, they were very glad they hadn't tried anything funny or picked a fight with him. With the boss defeated, the barrier it had created began to dissolve. That's when Lin noticed a succubus floating midair. Their eyes met, and Alice instantly panicked. She didn't even have time to wonder how Lin had managed to defeat the Earth Dragon God. With a piercing scream, she bolted, flying away as fast as her wings could carry her, not daring to look back even for a second. Lin quickly realized that this succubus was the mastermind behind it all, the reason he had ended up here, and how the world boss had been awakened. As that thought crossed his mind, a small flame flickered in his hand, but she was already too far away. He could only let out a sigh as she escaped once again. The party rushed over to Lin, concern etched on their faces. He shook his head, assuring them he was fine, then told everyone it was time to leave. Before they did, though, he took out the venom gem he had just acquired and crushed it. Suddenly, a surge of energy flowed from the gem into Lin's body. A toxic mist began to spread around him, causing the others to take a few steps back. The system notified him that he had acquired a new skill, Venomous Ring, which dealt poison damage within a 1-meter radius, inflicting damage equal to 10 points of strength per second. Lin was pleasantly surprised. He hadn't expected to actually gain a new skill. At the same time, the team couldn't help but be even more impressed. Meanwhile, in the heroic hall, White Divine sat cross-legged, his senses tuned to Lin's condition through the soul mark he had left on him. To his surprise, Lin's spirit had suddenly surged, and by quite a bit. It made him wonder if Lin had stumbled upon some seriously juicy loot. A moment later, White Divine's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Lin's soul mark was now surrounded by red lines. White Divine immediately recognized it as a primordial rune. A smile crept onto his face as he marveled at Lin's luck, but that smile quickly faded into a sigh. He knew that from now on, things were only going to get more intense. All he could do was hope that Lin would make it through the trials ahead. Not long after, an old man entered the hall, accompanied by a black unicorn crackling with lightning. This was Mo Xing-hei, aka Old Mo, another divine-level professional and one of the only divine-level summoner in the Empire. When they saw each other, they were both surprised. Not only they asked each other what brought them here, they also answered at the same time. One was here for his student, the other to watch his granddaughter in the eternal trials. They exchanged glances and then burst into hearty laughter. Old Mo sat down beside White Divine, curious about this mysterious student. White Divine chuckled, admitting it hadn't been long since he took on a student. Soon after, Mo located his granddaughter's soul mark, shaped like a unicorn, and asked White Divine how his student was doing. Without hesitation, White Divine replied, "A true prodigy with potential beyond the divine level." Old Mo was instantly taken aback. For someone like White Divine to give such high praise, it meant something. There couldn't be anyone else like that in the entire empire. White Divine nudged him with his elbow and said, "I heard your precious granddaughter just had a successful class evolution. Congrats!" Old Mo's face lit up with a big, proud grin. "Well, of course," he said, his voice dripping with pride. "Who else's granddaughter could it be?" White Divine chuckled, but then added, "Impressive as she is, she's still got nothing on my student." Old Mo wasn't having it. He shook his head, clearly not buying a word of it. To him, White Divine was exaggerating. Calling someone beyond divine level was a bit much. After all, in his eyes, his granddaughter was the undisputed top talent of the younger generation. That's when White Divine dropped the bombshell. "You know that Nirvana crystal your granddaughter used? It was Lin who helped her get it." Old Mo was stunned. He had heard of Lin from Mo Han, but he never expected that White Divine's student would be the very same person. Back in the Eternal Trials ground, another day had passed. Lin, still marked by the pillar of red light above him, ventured deeper into the dense forest. His party followed closely. As the days passed, word spread quickly about a human professional obtaining the primordial rune. This news caused a stir, and soon more and more people from Xiajing Academy rushed over, eager to protect Lin during his last few days. When they finally arrived and saw Lin safe and sound, surrounded by seniors from the Genesis squad, one of them even joked that they might have shown up a little late to the party. Hearing this, everyone on the team soon turned red with embarrassment when they tells the guy that he had completely misread the situation. But something unexpected caught Lin off guard. A second red pillar, not on the ground, but in the sky. Looking up, he spotted Mo Yun riding her unicorn, but she looked unusually anxious. It didn't take long to see why. She was being chased by a dozen demons, and they were closing in fast. Mo Yun also noticed the red pillar, and upon closer inspection, realized it was Lin. She was surprised to see him here, but oddly enough, his presence brought her a sense of comfort. Even though they hadn't interacted much, Lin had left a strong impression on her. Somehow, just knowing he was around made her feel a little safer, but with the demons hot on her trail, she knew she couldn't linger. At the very least, she had to lead them away. Yet now that Lin was here, the demons were bound to shift their focus to him. Without a second thought, she descended, extending a hand to Lin, hoping to help him escape. Lin, however, just shook his head and smiled, as if to say the demons should be the ones running away, not him. He turned to face the horde of abyssal demons, most of whom seemed to think they had hit the jackpot. But among them was one demon, Alice, who realized too late that she had made a grave mistake. The next moment, a flame ignited in Lin's hand. The sight of it sent Alice into a panic, and she shrieked, "It's Lin! Run!"